Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tanishka, and I'm delighted to have all of you here with us. As we begin, I can see some participants are still joining, so let's give them a moment to get settled. I hope you're all doing well and keeping safe. Welcome to those discovering Walking Tree for the first time. We pride ourselves on being the forefront of technology driven innovation, specializing in designing and implementing cutting edge web and mobile applications across various platforms. Walking Tree is not just a company. We are a collective of visionaries and pioneers who are passionately dedicated to facilitating seamless system integrations and driving digital transformations ahead. Our core expertise lies in advanced data integrations, analytics, and modernization of legacy systems onto high performance platforms. Equipped with a comprehensive suite of business intelligence solutions spanning over various domains, we are uniquely positioned to empower businesses. Our customized solutions cater to intricate data centric needs of the clients, offering them the agility and efficiency required in the competitive business environment. At Walking Tree, we aim to be more than just service providers. We strive to become trusted partners in your digital journey, offering industry led expertise and technological innovation to reshape the business for the future. A warm welcome to all of you who are new to Walking Tree. We are thrilled to have you all discover our company and join us today. Today, we will be discussing building scalable and performant web applications with Blazor. Blazor is a cutting edge technology that merges the web development with the flexibility of .NET. By leveraging WebAssembly, Blazor eliminates the need of JavaScript, allowing developers to write code in familiar language and benefit from the rich ecosystem of .NET libraries. With Blazor, developers can create feature-rich applications with seamless interactivity and real-time updates, providing a superior user experience. This innovative framework empowers the developers to push the boundaries of web development, unlocking new possibilities for creating an impactful and immersive application. Our honorable speaker today will shed further light on this topic. Towards the end of the webinar, we have set us some time aside to assign your questions, to address your questions and insights. I encourage you all to submit them in Q&A box throughout the session. Let's harness this collective intelligence present here today and foster a more informed and engaged discussion. We eagerly await your active participation. Our webinar today features Anudeep Nilagandhan. Anudeep, a seasoned senior technical manager, exemplifies astute problem solving, entrepreneurial acumen, and exceptional leadership. Instrumental to our digital and data analytics growth, he fosters client centric innovation. Anudeep's invaluable guidance and intelligence empowers us and our team, and his passion for Blazor inspires us. With him leading the way, we eagerly anticipate new horizons to be continued and the continued success. Before we delve into today's agenda, I want to assure that all your questions will be answered towards the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box provided. Now I'll hand over to you, Anudeep. Anudeep, how are you doing today?
Hey, hi Tanishka, I'm doing good. Thank you so much. I hope you're doing good as well. I would once again like to welcome everyone for another wonderful webinar from Walking Tree Technologies. I hope this session gives you some information and I'm very happy to address all your queries. Thank you so much. So let me share my screen and let me start the webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Tanishka. So today we are going to see some 8 topics like what is Blazor and why Blazor and the different hosting models of Blazor, Blazor component module, data binding in Blazor, on building a simple Blazor application and working with advanced Blazor concepts and best practices to follow for Blazor development. So as you all are aware, and this is something like an introduction to Blazor. So we're going to touch up some of the basics here, and I hope in going forward in the future we will have several sessions for Blazor. Okay, so let me introduce with what is Blazor. Yeah. So right now, if you see, we have we have so much of front-end technologies which are both open source and paid versions, and most of them are tagging around the so-called JavaScript. So uh, that is why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor. So there are several reasons why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor. So that is what we are going to see today. So why Blazor is some important topic which we are going to discuss in detail. But before that, I would like to also explain why Microsoft introduced Blazor. Okay. So Microsoft introduced Blazor to address several challenges and provide developers with a modern, unified, and productive way to build web applications. Okay. So the key reasons for Microsoft to introduce Blazor are as follows. Number one is to have a unified stack. So basically what happened was when Microsoft wanted to create a unified stack that allows developers to build both client-side and server-side web applications using C# and .NET. With Blazor, developers can use the same language, tools, and patterns throughout the entire application. So, which includes the front end, back end, etc. So, leading to increased productivity and code consistency. So, this particular unified stack is one reason where many developers across the globe they were able to adapt to any front end web technology, whereas they use Microsoft products mostly for the API. So this is one reason why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor, where not just API, but also the front end can be developed using C# itself without the dependency of JavaScript. There was another reason why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor. Or the other reason is C# on the web. As we all are developers, like most of us are aware that many developers like us were already familiar with C# and .NET. But Microsoft saw an opportunity to bring this popular programming language and ecosystem to the web development. By enabling C# to be used for web applications, what happened was Microsoft aimed to leverage the existing developer skills and attract more developers to the .NET ecosystem. So C# on the web was another important reason why Microsoft wanted to bring Blazor up front. The third important reason, as I said earlier, was to eliminate the dependency of the JavaScript fatigue. We also call in short as JS fatigue. Okay. So basically what is it? JavaScript fatigue, is a phenomenon where developers face difficulties in keeping up with the rapidly changing JavaScript ecosystem and multiple frameworks. So Blazor aims to eliminate JavaScript fatigue by providing an alternative for building web applications using C# and .NET. So allowing developers to focus on a single technology stack. So the developers can focus only on gaining the knowledge in C#. With the knowledge of C#, they can develop both the front end and the back end. Okay, fine. So these are the basics. What additional benefits can Microsoft add when they wanted to introduce Blazor? Another thing was code sharing. So when we talk about code sharing, so what happens is initially when Microsoft recognized the value of code sharing between client-side and server-side components, Blazor allows developers to share a common code, models, and business logic between the client and the server. So this reduces the duplication and enhancing maintainability. So this is something that we all developers agree that with a common language for the front end and back end, we can obviously enhance the maintainability and we can reduce the duplication. Now, coming to the other reasons why Microsoft wanted to introduce was the performance with the WebAssembly. So Blazor's WebAssembly hosting model allows C# code to run directly in the browser at near native speed. So this has opened up new possibilities for high performance web applications and complex calculations without requiring developers to write JavaScript. So this is another reason why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor. Many developers are familiar with the .NET framework. This is another reason. So Blazor was designed to appeal to developers who are already experienced with .NET and C Sharp. So by leveraging familiar tools and concepts, Microsoft aimed to reduce the learning curve for building web applications and enable .NET developers to transition seamlessly into the web development. So full stack .NET is something that we all were talking about that is possible with .NET. Okay. So now we are going to see actually the actual reason behind why Blazor. We saw why Microsoft wanted to introduce Blazor. Now, as a programmer, why should we choose Blazor? Okay. So Blazor offers several compelling reasons for choosing it as a web development framework. So here are some key reasons why developers can choose Blazor. As I said earlier, the same point which Microsoft wanted to insist, or a project like familiarity with C Sharp. Yes, for developers who are already experienced in C Sharp and the .NET ecosystem, so Blazor will obviously provide a seamless transition on the web development. It allows developers to leverage their existing skills, knowledge, and tools, eliminating the need to learn a new programming language or framework like the JavaScript or TypeScript. The second reason why a developer should choose Blazor is the full stack development. So Blazor enables developers to build the full stack web application entirely in C Sharp. As we all know, this is another key reason why I should be why I'm moving completely into Microsoft. Why you can completely move into Microsoft. With Blazor, you can write both the front-end UI components and the back-end logic using the same language, promoting code reuse, consistency, and easier maintenance. This eliminates the need for context switching between different programming languages and provides a consistent development experience across the entire application. The third reason is code sharing, which I have already discussed. Let me once again, put it for you. It allows developers to share code between the client and the server, reducing the development time and effort. Yes, with Blazor server, the components and business logic resides on the server, eliminating the need to duplicate code on the client. With Blazor WebAssembly, you can reuse existing C# libraries, models, and business logic on the client side. So maximizing code reuse and reducing maintenance overhead is another important feature of code sharing. So when I'm talking about WebAssembly and server, so these are two different hosting models, which I'll be talking about shortly. Okay, so there's nothing to worry. Another reason why we should choose is the productivity and the rapid development. So there is something called Blazor component-based architecture, which we are going to see in detail shortly. Okay, this component-based architecture, rich tooling, and familiar programming model contribute to increased developer productivity. People who are already familiar with Angular and other front-end technologies, you must be definitely familiar with Blazor's. The general component-based architecture. Blazor also follows a similar component-based architecture. Okay, so this ability to reuse existing code and libraries, along with the availability of debugging and testing tools, accelerates the development cycles and reduces time to market for web applications. And coming to performance, this is what our core title is all about. So when coming to performance and efficiency, Blazor achieves high performance by utilizing WebAssembly in the case of a WebAssembly project or an application, or efficient server-side rendering if we choose a Blazor server model. Okay. With WebAssembly, Blazor applications can execute directly in the browser, providing near native performance. Blazor server also offers real-time updates and efficient bandwidth usage by sending UA updates over a signal R connection, resulting in a responsive user experience. This is what we'll be talking about maybe going forward in future when we start building applications, when we are going to talk more about Blazor. We're going to definitely concentrate more about the efficiency and the performance. Okay. The last reason why we should choose is the community and the ecosystem. Blazor has a rapidly growing community of developers, which means there is a wealth of resources, tutorials, and libraries available to support your development efforts. Additionally, as Blazor is part of the .NET ecosystem, developers can leverage the extensive collection of .NET libraries and tools, enabling rapid application development and integration with the existing systems. So these are some of the main reasons why we can choose the Blazor over the other front-end technologies. But whether these are sufficient? No. We should also look at few other important things which any framework should support, which is the cross-platform capabilities and the security. So with respect to cross-platform capabilities, Blazor application can run on multiple platforms, including Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. With Blazor WebAssembly, applications can be executed on different browsers, allowing for cross-platform compatibility without requiring separate code bases. This flexibility empowers developers to target a wide range of devices and platforms with a single code base. This is something that everybody is looking at. This is something that as a developer, as a full stack developer, we would be mostly interested in. Another important factor with any client or even we would be looking at is a security aspect. Yes, Blazor provides a built-in security feature that are intrinsic to the .NET platform. Developers can utilize features such as authentication, authorization, and data validation from the .NET ecosystem to ensure robust security for their web applications. So these are some of the important reasons why we can switch over to Blazor. Okay. The next one is different hosting models of Blazor, which I have been talking about previously also. So there are different hosting models. Okay, so what exactly are they? So one is a WebAssembly model, the other is the server model. So these models determine how the Blazor application is hosted and executed. Here's an I can present you an overview, like what exactly are these. Let us take a Blazor WebAssembly project or an application. So what happens is, it is often referred to as a Blazor WASM, WASM, WASM we call, that is WebAssembly. Okay, allows you to run the Blazor application directly in the browser using a WebAssembly concept. So what is it? So we all know it is a binary instruction. This WebAssembly is a binary instruction format that browsers can execute at near native speed. With Blazor WebAssembly, the entire application is downloaded to the client's browser and executed there, providing a rich and interactive user experience. In Blazor WebAssembly, what happens is the C# code and the necessary runtime libraries are compiled to WebAssembly bytecode, which can be executed in modern browsers without requiring server round trips for UI updates. So the application is downloaded as a static bundle that includes the Blazor runtime, then the .NET runtime components, and the application specific code. So this itself will give us an idea that when we are going to host an application using the Blazor WebAssembly hosting model, the application sits on the client device, runs as a near native code for the browser, allowing the application to run extremely performant application. So this is another reason. And WebAssembly is well suited for scenarios where you want to create client-side web applications and rich interactivity, offline support, and ability to execute logic directly on the client. However, it should be noted that the initial application load time can be longer compared to the Blazor server, as the entire application needs to be downloaded. This we all know as a developer, know in this into the industry. So when something is going to be completely onto the end user's browser, so the initial load of the application can be a bit higher than once caching is taken care of, then WebAssembly is going to work as a native application. What is the second approach? The second approach is a Blazor server model, hosting model. So the Blazor server hosting model allows the application's UI to be rendered on the server initially, and then streamed to the client's browser using SignalR, a real-time communication framework. Okay, so SignalR we all are aware of. Once again, I would like to explain it in a later point of time. The user interacts with this application through the browser, but the UI updates and the event handling occur on the server always. In Blazor server, the application is executed on the server, and only the UI changes and the events are sent back and forth between the server and the client. This approach minimizes the amount of data sent over the network, resulting in efficient bandwidth usage. The server manages the UI updates and handles the Blazor server and handles the state of the components, ensuring a responsive and real-time user experience. And other reason why Blazor server we can choose is it is suitable for scenarios where you want to leverage server-side processing and for example real-time updates and have a better control over sensitive application logic and data. When you are going to be a bit concerned about your data security, then this Blazor server model, hosting model would definitely come in handy. Other reason it is also useful when you have a low powered client device or constrained network environments. This is often the case why we choose the Blazor server model, because we may not be aware like what kind of a device the end user might be using. So the other question can be is then in which case we will be going for a Blazor WebAssembly model. So obviously when we are aware about the target users for a, let us say let us take an ERP application, let us take a closed community application for an office or for a company where the company can take care of the end user's device. That is one way where we can ensure the application performance will never be hindered. So in such a case, we'll go for the Blazor WebAssembly hosting model. Okay. And obviously, it is important to note that both the hosting models have their own advantages and disadvantages, and I would say considerations. So the WebAssembly model offers a rich client-side experience, but requires the entire application to be downloaded to the client. On the other hand, the server model leverages server-side processing, but relies on a persistent connection to the server for the UI updates. The choice between the hosting model depends on the factors such as the application requirements, the network conditions, desired user experience, and the need for client-side or the server-side processing. These are some of the factors that we should keep in mind while selecting the hosting model. Yes, I was talking more about the component model or the component based architecture, which the people having if you have some experience on the other front end web technologies like Angular and other technologies, we will be aware. Once again, Blazor also has a similar structure. I'll explain this. The Blazor component model is a fundamental concept in Blazor that defines the building blocks of Blazor applications. It revolves around the idea of creating reusable and self-contained UI components using a combination of HTML and C# code. In Blazor, a component is a self-contained unit that encapsulates both the UI elements and the accompanying code logic. Components are responsible for rendering the UI, handling user interactions, and managing their own state. They can be composed together to build complex user interfaces. So I think that there are key aspects of Blazor component model which is very important. One is the component structure itself. So a Blazor component is a structure using Razor syntax. Okay. So as we all know, once again, Razor syntax is nothing but a combination of HTML and the C# code, and the C# code. A component typically consists of a .razor file, which contains the components markup, which is the HTML part, and the code, which is the C# part. The HTML markup defines the UI structure, while the C# code provides the component's logic and behavior. Then component architecture also provides reusability, as we already spoke about. It promotes reusability by allowing the components to be used multiple times, which is the core idea of using components within an application or even across different applications. So components can be nested also within another component, creating a hierarchy of reusable building blocks. This reusability simplifies application development, improves maintainability, and reduces code duplication. As you know, in the other technology, there's a life cycle involved for any component. when a component will be initiated, when a component will be ended, etc. So similarly, in Blazor also we have a component life cycle. Blazor components have a well-defined life cycle that consists of various stages, such as the the initial one, as you all know, which is the component initialization, then component rendering, updating, and the disposal of the component. Each stage is associated with a specific lifecycle method. Okay. These lifecycle methods allows you to perform initialization, update, and state execution at different stages of a component's lifecycle, of a component's life. Okay. Finally, when coming to component lifecycle, there is one concept called data binding, which we're going to talk about, of course. So what is data binding? So Blazor provides powerful data binding capabilities to establish a connection between the component properties and the UI. It supports both one-way and two-way binding, which we will talk about shortly. Other important aspect of a component is the event handling. So what is this? What is this? We all know in the other technology, like the same way, Blazor components can handle user interactions through event handling. We can define event handlers in a component's C# code and wire them up to UI elements using event binding. When an event is triggered, the corresponding event handler method is executed, allowing you to respond to user's action and update the component state. Finally, the component parameters. What are they? Components can accept input values known as parameters, which are passed from their parent components. Parameters allow for dynamic customization of components' behavior and appearance. They can be used to pass data, configurations, configuration options, or even callback functions from the parent components to child components. These are some of the features that we talk about when we explore more about the Blazor component model with a live example. We can explore each one of them. Okay. Coming to data binding. Data binding is another aspect that the other front-end technologies have. Blazor also does have the same. Okay. So data binding in Blazor allows you to establish a connection between the component properties and the UI elements. This we already know. Ensuring that changes in the component state are reflected. In the UI and vice versa, Blazor supports both one-way and two-way data binding. Here's an overview of how data binding works in Blazor. As we can see in the picture, okay. So one is the one-way data binding. One-way data binding allows you to bind component properties to UI elements, ensuring that changes in the component state are reflected in the UI. So this is the main objective of the one-way data binding. Okay. When we talk about the two-way data binding, it allows a synchronization between the component properties and the user input. So this enables seamless interaction between the component and the user. And just like in Angular or the other technologies where we use the at directive, here also we use the at bind directive to use the data binding. Okay. To implement two-way data binding, we will typically use a combination of an input element and the component property. Okay. The last one is the event handling and data binding. Okay, we spoke about one-way, two-way, that's fine. Now, when Blazor allows you to combine the event handling with data binding, that brings more advantages. You can bind UI events such as button clicks or input changes to component methods and update the properties accordingly. Okay, so Blazor's data binding capabilities simplify the process of synchronizing data between the component properties and the UI. Hereby, it reduces the amount of manual data manipulation. By leveraging one-way and two-way data binding, you can also create dynamic and interactive user interfaces that respond to changes in the component state and the user input. So this is what is more about. So we will shortly come back to this as we are we may run out of time when we go over how to build an application. So we will come back to this shortly after the other slides. Okay, we'll talk about working with advanced Blazor concepts. So now we have a general idea or a basic idea what Blazor is, what are the different hosting models, and what is the component based architecture. When we speak about this, and what is data binding, how a component library and the UI can talk to each other. If if at all, as a full stack developer, if I have to progress and if I have to master Blazor, then what are the advanced concepts that I should know? So I would say more than mastering it, I would say there are certain areas that we have to cover to advance the concepts in Blazor. So one is like working with advanced Blazor concepts requires a good understanding of the framework's fundamentals and familiarity with more advanced topics. So I can say some of the concepts which I took. Similarly, you can also do is we have to master the basics. So which once again, talking about this, we're going to have multiple sessions after this. So we will definitely see what are the basics and how we are going to progress. Then we can talk about more about then we can talk more about Blazor. Right now, what we have to understand is we need to master the basics, meaning dividing the advanced like before diving into the advanced concept, we have to make sure that we have a solid understanding of the basic principles such as the component structure, the data binding, and this event handling, especially routing. These are some things that we have to concentrate more. And it is also important to have a strong foundation before moving on to complex topics. Second one is we need to explore more about the component life cycle, which is what is the basis for any of this full stack development. Okay, so Blazor components have a life cycle that consists of various stages, such as the initialization, rendering, and disposal. Understanding the component life cycle is crucial for working with more advanced scenarios like optimizing performance or handling the state management. And familiarizing ourselves with the different lifecycle methods available in Blazor components is another key area that we need to keep in mind when we advance. And learning about the more important concept, which we all know, it's called the DI or the dependency injection. This is a powerful technique that helps manage the dependencies between different parts of a Blazor application. It also allows us to decouple components and services, making them easier to maintain and test. And Blazor has inbuilt support for the dependency injection. Okay. And finally, I would say we need to experiment more with the component communication because Blazor offers several methods for components to communicate with each other. We need to explore, many of them like parent to child, child to parent, and sibling components. This we need to do. Okay. And state management is another concept where we need to focus more to advance and exploring interoperability with the JavaScript. And we also need to make sure that we reduce the dependency of JavaScript as another area where we can concentrate more on the C# aspect to to reduce the interoperability and to reduce the use of JavaScript. And we we also need to stay updated with the latest environments and the latest advancements in Blazor. One, I would say, like Blazor is an evolving environment or a framework that we all know, and new features and improvements are constantly being introduced. So staying updated with the official Blazor documentation and the community forums and blogs will help us advance into the Blazor. So this is one thing. Now coming into the best practices for the Blazor app development. So we need to ensure that whatever we do, we develop as a full stack developer or as a front developer or as a backend developer. We always follow the best practices. Similarly, for Blazor applications, we need to ensure that the structure of the project is properly organized, and we use the component-based architecture and how well we are optimizing the performance of the application by choosing the right by choosing the correct hosting model. All these matters. When we talk about structuring the project, so what happens is we need to organize the Blazor project into logical folders and files. Okay, so we can use a modular approach. We all know, like separating components, services, and other resources into appropriate directories. This improves the code maintainability also, as we all know, and makes it easier to navigate a project. And using a component-based architecture. So Blazor follows a component-based architecture, as we all know, as we have been talking about. So we need to ensure that we are breaking it down into reusable and self-contained components. This is what the I mean, this is what like one of the best practices that we follow in Working Tree, that we make sure whatever components that we do, that we create, are broken down into into a molecule that it is reusable across. I mean, like anywhere. So this is another best practice and best approach that we need to follow. Each component should have a clear responsibility and it should encapsulate its own logic and the UI. Optimizing performance. So Blazor provides several techniques to optimize the performance using techniques like in this lazy loading and this virtualization and uh, other techniques, that we can ensure the performance is optimized, avoiding unnecessary data fetching or computations, and utilize caching strategies when appropriate will definitely improve the will improve the performance of the application. And employing proper data binding is also another important aspect that we should always keep in mind. Since we have multiple data binding available in the in Blazor, we need to know when to use one way and when to use two way. That is another important aspect. Avoiding excessive data binding can impact the performance. So we need to consider using the we also say like no this MAUI, which is another technology which we'll talk about later. So we need to use the .NET MAUI style data binding syntax. So that is another thing that we'll talk about later. And we have to minimize the JavaScript interoperability, which is very important. So that is the main objective of coming to Blazor. So although Blazor allows interaction with JavaScript, excessive reliance on JavaScript interop can lead to performance issues and reduce the benefits of using a C# based framework. So whenever possible, prefer using Blazor's built-in features and components or utilize Blazor compatible libraries. Handling errors and exceptions. So implement proper error handling mechanisms in your Blazor application. Something like using try-catch blocks to catch and handle exceptions gracefully. Displaying meaningful error messages to users and consider logging errors for debugging purposes. We need to utilize Blazor's error boundaries or global exception handling strategies to handle uncaught exceptions. So these are some of the areas or ways using which we can follow the best practices. And obviously, code reusability is another aspect that we all know about, we should follow. And applying separation of concerns. When this, we all know, like when the solid principles and separate concerns appropriately, within the Blazor application, and avoiding mixing business logic with UI code and utilizing the services or repositories to encapsulate data access and business logic will promote better code organization, testability, and maintainability. Another best practice that we always follow in in Working Tree, and we also suggest all our technology partners, is as and when we complete, we also ensure that writing unit test cases. So unit testing is essential for ensuring the correctness and stability of the Blazor components and services. Writing unit tests to cover critical functionalities, edge cases, and any custom logic. And utilizing testing frameworks like NUnit or XUnit, along with tools like mock for mocking dependencies, will help accelerating the unit test cases. Of course, staying up to date with Blazor ecosystem is another important aspect that we should also look at what's coming next to ensure we follow, we still follow, and we keep following the best practices. Okay. So by this, we have come to the end of the session. Let me quickly run through how to create a simple Blazor application. So I use Visual Studio 2022. This community edition. So when we open that, when we click on create a new project, on the search bar we can type Blazor. That will give you different type of application that we can create in Blazor. Okay. So we can choose the Blazor server app or the Blazor WebAssembly app. So as mentioned earlier, Blazor WebAssembly app will create the WebAssembly hosting model of the application, and the server app will create the server hosting model of the application. We can choose language like C#. Okay, and this is one. Let me see if I can quickly stop sharing this and show the Visual Studio. So when we create, when we open Visual Studio, when we click on create a new project, so we get so many number of and types of projects available in Visual Studio. So what you can go to search, you can type here Blazor. That will give you only the only the Blazor application types. So let me try quickly on the Blazor WebAssembly app, and I click next. We can give an app name, give a meaningful name like. Yes. Always ensure that no, this is another best practice, that always ensure that we select a .NET which is of long-term support. Okay. And always configure for HTTPS. And it is as simple as it is. So we are done with creating a WebAssembly Blazor Wasm project. Okay. Yeah. So this is how our Blazor WebAssembly project look like. When you go to the solution explorer, you can see the list of the folder structure for the Blazor WebAssembly project. So this I'm going to explain more in detail about this Blazor WebAssembly project and the Blazor server project in the upcoming days. Right now, this is a basic example how we can get started with creating a Blazor WebAssembly or a Blazor server application. Okay. So let me go back to the Q&A session. Let me go back to my presentation. Yes. So finally, we have come to the end of this session. So I hope I have provided some basic introduction about Blazor and its such working models. If
Yeah,
you have,
so we have a question from John. John wants to know, does Blazor provide offline support? If not, what is the get around for this?
okay. What to say? See, Blazor definitely was providing offline support until late 2021. But then right now, I would say like, what to say? So as of the last update in September 2021, okay. So Blazor, since it is a web framework developed by Microsoft, it does not natively provide offline support out of the box, but it is primarily designed to run client-side code using WebAssembly, which means it requires an internal connection to load and execute the application in the user's browser. So, however, we can implement our own offline support in Blazor applications using various techniques and technologies. I hope this answers.
Thank you, Anudeep. Now, next question is from Mark. He wants to know how Blazor framework is better than JavaScript frameworks, or when do you suggest to use Blazor over popular JavaScript frameworks?
Yes, I would say it is a very good question, and it is very relevant to today's webinar. So Blazor is being a relatively new technology, as we all know. Like it was launched in 2018 only. See, and uh, it may have different performance characteristics compared to established JavaScript front-end technologies or the frameworks like React, Angular, or the Vue. But but I would say some considerations which can be taken into account when you can choose Blazor over the other JavaScript framework. One is the initial load time. So when you take a Blazor's WebAssembly application, generally it has a longer initial load time compared to JavaScript frameworks. But this is because the entire Blazor runtime and application code need to be downloaded, and executed in the client's browser. So, but we need to also look at the performance. Once after the initial load, Blazor is going to be very good the Blazor WebAssembly is going to be a very good hosting model that's going to give a very near native performance. But in context, if you see, JavaScript frameworks typically load only the necessary runtimes and dependencies. So this makes the initial load faster. However, this all these subsequent loads of Blazor WebAssembly application benefit from caching, resulting in improved load times. This is one example I would say, which is the initial load time. Second reason is the execution speed. So when we talk about the Blazor WebAssembly, so what happens is the application execute code within the browser using the WebAssembly. So which provides a near performance, as I said earlier. On the other hand, when it is executed on the browser's JavaScript engine, the engine has its own constraints. So however, for typical UI-related tasks and DOM manipulation, JavaScript frameworks often have mature optimization techniques that can deliver fast performance. Other thing is like bandwidth efficiency. When we talk about bandwidth efficiency, Blazor server offers bandwidth efficiency by minimizing the amount of data transferred between the client and the server, because only the UI updates and UI interactions are sent over the network signals or the network using SignalR. This reduces a lot of bandwidth, whereas on the other hand, JavaScript typically depends on the REST or the GraphQL APIs to fetch data. I would say one more reason maybe like the the type of interactivity or the responsiveness. I would say Blazor server provides real-time interactivity as the UI updates are handled on the server itself and sent to the client using SignalR. This can provide a high responsive user experience even with lower powered client devices on the client side. And it can also provide immediate UI update without the need for a server round trip. So these are some of the techniques I would say would be um, good to select Blazor over JavaScript frameworks. I hope this answers.
Sure. So we have another question from Linda. She wants to know how data binding works in Blazor.
Yeah, I think this I have already explained. Let me give a short intro again. So there are different types of data binding, as I mentioned. One is the one-way data binding, other is the two-way data binding. Okay, and we also have even we can also handle events also using data binding. So when you talk about one-way data binding, what typically happens is it allows us to bind the component properties to UI elements. So what happens is this ensures the change in the component state and which will be reflected in the UI. This is called one-way data binding. The second data binding is a two-way data binding. What happens is when we allow synchronization between the component properties and the user input, which enables seamless interaction between the component and the user. So this is the two-way data binding. And it also allows us to combine the event handling with the data binding, which is what is called as event handling with data binding. I hope this answers.
Thank you, Anudeep. These were the questions. No more questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anudeep, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you found today's webinar insightful. Before we sign off for the day, I wanted to let you all know that we are having an interesting lineup of webinars next month. On 24th of August, we have a very insightful session on getting most out of microservice architecture. I will be sending invites to you all. Until next time, folks, thank you once again for joining us today.